Central European University in Hungary. In this Blue Link story, we will hear from Ruslana Koziienko, a PhD student who has been in Kiev doing her ethnographical fieldwork. Could you please tell us what happened in the last few days? How did you end up being here in Budapest from Kiev?
Yeah, so I was doing my fieldwork in Ukraine, and on Thursday morning, I was in Kiev. We were woken up by the attacks at around 4 or 5 a.m. And basically it took us a couple of hours to decide that we need to evacuate from Kiev, because this is a decision I took for my family, and I was lucky to be there in Ukraine at that moment, because otherwise I think people are kind of lost at the moment. They don't know whether they should leave or stay, whether they should wait, and I took the decision to evacuate my family. Yeah, and it took us 5 days to reach Budapest. We tried to cross the Polish border first, but the queues are insane. Everyone knows that. Then, luckily, after 5 days, we reached Budapest, and for the last 3-4 days, I've been trying to help everyone I can who are still in Ukraine under bombs and attacks, and who are with no food or electricity or water, stuck in their cities, occupied by Russian military. Yeah, trying to help everyone I can, basically.
So, just a step back in the story. How was life in the last days? Was there the expectation? Did people realize that the war was coming?
I think the world has been discussing these possibilities in the end of the last year. I mean, okay, I want to start from the fact that the war actually started in 2014. So it's not something new completely for Ukraine. But the full-fledged war started a week ago. And people, since the end of last year, people were quite uncertain, I think. I think certain people thought it's not possible. Full-fledged war, it's just not possible. Other people were sure that it's gonna happen, and many more were just uncertain about what's actually gonna happen. So, but still, people were preparing. Actually, I think I'm quite proud of my of Ukrainian people in the sense that the panic or the feeling of being scared didn't define them really, because even before the war started, many people were just preparing practically. They were thinking practically in terms of, okay, if there is a war, what should I do? What should I should I prepare? I should have my backpack to evacuate. I should think of my relatives. I should think of this and that. And even right now, many people, of course, everyone is scared, but many people are just doing very practical, necessary things of helping each other, of fighting this war on very different fronts, from actual physical front to informational front. Sorry, I'm sure I've answered your question.
No, but this is very interesting and very shocking for everyone. How does one's life change from one day to the other when all of a sudden you are in a military conflict area?
Yeah, it's just like this. Like one evening you watch a series with your loved ones and go to bed, and the next morning you are woken up by the attacks and by the sirens in the city, and that it just happened. And I don't know, unfortunately so many people are still stuck in Kiev and in so many cities, and my heart goes to them, because it's really heartbreaking. People are sitting in cellars, in shelters with no food, because the roads, in some places roads are blocked by the Russian military, and people can't access any food or water or anything. I don't know, to tell a personal story, my grandfather, whom unfortunately we were not able to evacuate, 2 days ago called me and said, well, in our village we finally, some bread was brought to the village, and I was able to buy 2 loaves of bread, and I asked him, okay, why didn't you buy more, like 4 maybe? And he said, well, other people also need it. So, and to be honest, it's just heartbreaking. Yes, of course. I mean, yeah, this is what defines people.
What is the situation at the border? What did you see there? What did you experience?
Okay, so I can tell in terms of so we crossed the Hungarian border. When it comes to Polish border, I can just say that the queues are really huge. It takes sometimes a couple of days to get through border. Obviously, because Polish border is the closest to many people, but we went through Hungarian border, and the experience, to be honest, was very humiliating. Again, I am completely aware that it wasn't the worst experience for refugees ever, because I'm completely aware that Syrian refugees, for example, experience much worse conditions, and those conditions are just not comparable. But still, so for us, basically, just because we are white Eastern Europeans, it was kind of better, but still it was just humiliating the way the guards are treating people at the border. So at least at the small crossing point where we were stuck, it was not, the protest was very poorly organized. There were no queues, no understanding who goes where. The guards didn't provide any information, and so we spent like almost 10 hours standing in the wind in winter with all our luggage in a cage-like space. So people were like just basically staying behind in this cage, and every like half an hour the guards were opening the door and letting maybe 10 people go. And then every time the door opened, many people just pushed to the door just to get closer to the door, and it was just dangerous. Even if it was your turn, it was basically dangerous to go there just because you might be squeezed. And the guard didn't do anything, but to be honest, even like that, it's kind of okay-ish comparing to the way the guards treated people with disabilities, because a member of my family has disabilities, and she can't walk on her own. She can't stand. She couldn't stay for 10 hours outside. So my mother was begging the border guard, to let the woman, like my mother-in-law, stay in the car on theirs. I mean, I'm just talking about Hungarian border. At the Ukrainian side, everyone is let through. It just happened, it takes 1 minute, that's it.
Oh, so
but
all the experience you've described is at
it's just at the Hungarian border.
side.
Because, I mean, I know that Hungarian state has opened its borders for Ukrainians, and I really appreciate this kind of solidarity, but to be honest, I think much more has to be done, because it's winter and people are waiting with their families and kids and their relatives. Sometimes they're old and frail, and much more has to be done in terms of the organization, because the process is not organized well, and it's taken hours. So yeah, with my mother-in-law, it took my mom, I don't know, 10 minutes of crying at the border guard to allow my mother-in-law wait on the other side.
Because she has
she can't
disability.
stand. She just can't stand. And this kind of level of inhumanity impressed me a lot. But also, like, it's not only about, so okay, there is this issue about general conditions, issue about the people with disabilities. There are no conditions and no willingness to accommodate them, to be honest. And third point, it's not even about the Ukrainians, but about those international students who are coming from Ukraine because they were stuck with the war. And in that queue where we spent 10 hours, I met people from Egypt, Tunisia, Pakistan. They were studying in Kharkiv before the war, and when the war started, they were just fleeing the country as many other Ukrainians. And for them, the situation is very uncertain because they're not Ukrainians. They can't be sure whether they would be let through the border, or how they're gonna, whether they would enjoy the same help that Ukrainians are sometimes provided. For example, even the free trains. And for them, it matters because they are students from poor countries. So yeah, it's hard for Ukrainians, but unfortunately, at this moment also, I think the international community has to take care of those international students who are as much stuck as Ukrainians are.
Thank you for sharing your story, and we will continue telling the personal stories and the stories of civil society engagement with the war and military confrontation in Ukraine. Stay with Blue Link Stories.